Hey. uh, um, Hi, it's Paul again, and I'm just experimenting now by using one of the video cameras that I have. Um, I'm downstairs, I'm in daylight. This is the first. Normally I'm upstairs and I'm using the webcam and it's night time. Nice daylight here. I don't know, I probably look like I've got really slitty eyes. Um, but it's nice to be recording in daylight, and I've no idea how this is going to turn out. So it's fun. The dogs, if you hear any strange noises, I've just come back from a walk with the three dogs, who are now all fast asleep-ish, so they're not going to be making any appearances, fingers crossed. I wanted to just talk today, for today's vlogging challenge video, about my main character in We Are the Pigs. My main character, before I talk about my main character, a lot of people, when they are thinking about their novel, come up with a killer idea or something that really excites them, so they get really inspired. And then the next obstacle that they have is, how am I going to tell this story? Who's going to be telling the story? And you can get mixed up in all sorts of things like head hopping, between different characters, or you can switch into the first person and tell it from a first person perspective. You can have omniscient narration, where you can tell the story even though the main character can't possibly know all these things that are going on, and all sorts of things like that. But and that's fine, and people can spend time working all that out. But the main thing that I think I struggle with, and I know a lot of other people do too, is making the main character active enough. And what I mean by that is that a lot of people, especially when they're new to writing, come up with a great idea for a novel, a great plot, and they can even come up with a great character. And the problem that they create for themselves is then they have a character that is very passive, and so things happen to them. And the classic example of that would be to have a main character who sort of agonizes for a very long time whilst things are happening all around them, or things are happening to them, but they never do anything. So they have a lot of thoughts, and they have a lot of emotions and things like that, which are often explored in great detail and very effectively. But the story itself is not interesting to read to a reader, because the main character doesn't do anything. One of the big problems that beginning writers face is how to switch their character on so that the character becomes active and becomes the plot driver, and taking action, causing consequences and things like that. That's one of the big things. So my main character in We Are the Pigs is a character called Chloe Barnes, and I came up with her completely by accident. I had a completely different character in mind. Originally, the main character for We Are the Pigs was going to be a child, which was probably going to be quite difficult to write, because probably I was pitching in the 5 to 7 year old category for the main character. And of course that character would have very limited cognizance of the world around it, or him or her. And that would have been a big problem. How was I going to? I mean, in some ways it could be a great advantage, because I could write about things in a kind of limited sense. So I could create confusing things. I could deliberately not describe things and sort of add to the mystery, which would have been great. But at the same time, when I did want to get something across and I did want to convey it, how could I credibly do that from the perspective of a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old? That would have been really, really difficult. I know Mark Haddon did a very good job in The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time, and that was with an older child character, and I think I would have really struggled if I'd have tried to do this with a younger child. So there I was in NaNoWriMo 2011, and Meg Kingston we met up in the pub as usual for our NaNoWriMo meets, and we were doing a little write-on exercise. And Meg just came up with the idea about, okay, write about a character called Chloe. Tell us about her. You know, who is she? Blah blah blah. And for some reason, I took to it with gusto and created this character called Chloe, who, you know, had various things and, you know, various characteristics. And I wrote a really interesting passage that I kept. And then I developed her as a character, and she pretty much took over and became the main character, which was great. And I just wanted to explain about this because it all happened completely by accident, and there wasn't really any rhyme or reason about it. But once I started to write from her perspective, it just became obvious that she was going to be the main character. And I had fiddled about with a number of different characters prior to that, and, you know, with various dissatisfying results. So what am I saying here? Well, really, I'm saying that don't get hung up on your main character. Have an explore, have an adventure with a couple of different characters, write from their perspective, try out being them, you know, walk a mile in their shoes, as they say. And then once you do that, once you have the experience of writing from that character, you'll have a much better handle on whether this is going to be a good character, an interesting character to write from their perspective as the main character, the protagonist in your story. I think a lot of the mistakes that people make can be that they come up with a fantastic character concept. You know, it's a cool character when they're looking in from the outside, but the character concept is only cool from the outside, and when you try and write from it, it's not that interesting. I just realised something, that I came down here to shoot a video where I didn't have some kind of crosshair on my face, and the sun is so bright, it's coming through the windows and it's making a pattern. Oh well, I'll do the next one outside, and hopefully, I just realised that. Tiff, I'm sorry, I was gonna not do that, and there I've managed to do it again. Look what I've created. So anyway, your main character, my advice is make them active, make them a doer. Okay, don't have them just observing the world around them and agonising and being angst-ridden and confused and all the rest of it, as a lot of beginning writers tend to do. It's harder to write an active character. It's easier to write a passive character where they're just observing what's going on around them. It's harder to write an active character, but switch that around, and actually from a reader's point of view, it's much easier to read and much more fun to read and interesting to read about an active character who's doing things. It's boring and self-indulgent. That's how it comes across. You know, the writer's been self-indulgent if you are reading a story where the main character is just a passive, you know, sort of observer, and they're not really doing anything. I guess it can work sometimes. I'm not saying there's no room for passive characters, but I think the main character in your story needs to be very active. The sunlight's getting bright now. I think the vampire in me is saying turn the camera off now and go and find some shade. Anyway, so that's main characters. This has been day 5 in the vlogging challenge. I hope this has been interesting and useful for you, and it's good fun and good experience for me doing videos. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.